sermon number 3, Moments with the Master, and I'm calling it Attracted to Mess, Restoring It to the Old. And when I use the word mess, I do mean sin, like all of the sin and struggle and temptation of life we wrestle with, but really all of the other stuff in life that's not just sin, just our brokenness, kind of sort of the naturalness of our humanity. I don't want you to hear me today just focusing on sin, because Jesus is not really focusing on that at all with this man. He's focusing on the reality of his pain, his suffering, the baggage he's carrying. And I don't want to be a church that just focuses on sin. I want to be a church that focuses on the life and abundance and the wholeness that God brings us. And God obviously frees us from sin as well. So we got to really be aware of ourselves as Christians of sin, but then also Jesus the liberator. So here we go. Matthew 8, verses 1 through 4. You guys have heard this story a million times. We're going to kind of hopefully open it up in a little bit of a different way. When Jesus had come down from the mountain, let me pause for a minute. He's coming down after the Sermon on the Mount. That's chapters 5 through 8. So this is the mountain. When he comes down from the mountain, the great crowds followed him. And there was a leper who came to him and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean." And he stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, "I do choose to be clean." Immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And then Jesus said to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them." And that is the amazing good news of the Lord. A couple of just takeaway phrases today would be: Jesus is attracted to our mess and he can't resist it. It's impossible for Jesus to walk away, like it's in his DNA. Jesus is attracted to our mess. Dan Ortland, from the book I'm reading, Gentle and Lowly, says this: "It is the fallenness which Jesus came to undo that is irresistibly attracted to him." So our fallenness is irresistibly attractive to Jesus. So if you look throughout all of the 4 Gospels, the most accumulative activity we see is that Jesus' deepest impulse, his natural instinct, is to be attracted and moving towards our sin and suffering, not away from. So when we were growing up, I'm not sure what your experience with God was, whether it was judgmental and condemning, or you walked around as a Christian just waiting for Jesus to slap your hands. But if you take all the 4 Gospels and you look at all the accumulative activity of Jesus, you, without contest, without contestment, are going to see compassion on repeat, moving towards our suffering on repeat. So compassion versus condemnation, suffering versus slapping our wrists. So we're really just gonna experience this throughout Jesus. So I want that to be our image of God as our Savior. And we know that Jesus is the invisible image of God. So if you ever wonder what's on the heart of God, you just look at the accumulative actions of Jesus, and you're going to see a God who is accumulatively compassionate versus condemning. Not to minimize wrath, not to minimize sin, but this is who our God is. We had 2 incidents happen in our home recently. One of our children, who I will not name, and I'll do my best not to throw them under the bus. One of our children is a teenager. They're both teenagers, but one of them is experiencing the freedom of making decisions on their own. Morality decisions, hormonal decisions, and they're not good ones. One of our children is actively filling a void with bad decisions, and we're talking about it, trying to kind of get back on the same path. And I don't know if this is true for you as parents, but what happens inside of me as I see this mess, okay, and these keywords are messy, as I see this behavior, as I see this decision making, as I see my child living out mess, I have a bunch of internal responses. There's hurt, there's frustration, there's disappointment, and not the best first response, right? So it takes a little bit of time for me to have the right emotional and mental response towards my child. Where I'm headed with this is I used the pronoun, darn it, their mess, their mess not causes, but I allow their mess to stir not the right response right away. Okay, and just got to picture Jesus's response to the leopard's mess in contrast to our response. Like, do you guys experience that at all? Your children behave in a certain way that's not consistent or parallel with what we want. And can you just kind of throw out your immediate, some gut responses or even verbal responses? Are you patient or impatient? Kind or?
Impatient, disappointed, grieved.
So impatient, disappointed, grieved. Yeah, thank you. I'm not alone. Anybody online, you can just feel free to throw in there like your adjective there or whatever. We had another experience. So I'm just kind of throwing myself under the bus. I feel like as a pastor, it's just best to be the one showing you what it's like, because your stories are probably even better than some of mine, or maybe not. I don't know. Well, we had another scenario in our house with a little bit more mess. We have this cute little dog. It's a mixture of a spaniel and a poodle because we couldn't handle just full-on spaniel, right? They're a little bit too prissy, a little too fancy. So we've got this cute little cavapoo, and it got a haircut, right? It got a haircut and it gets shaved all the way down to I don't know what. So it's almost like a non-dog now. It's like a non-creature. And I find, again, you guys are going to see me as shallow here, right? I'm just used to this being the thing. I'm embarrassed by how it looks. I don't want to walk with it out in public. My emotional connection to this non-creature, this non-dog thing is very, very different. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. So my response to its mess is embarrassment and shame and distance. And we're going to see in this story that Jesus is dramatically different, right? Jesus is like, leper, come on in. So here we go. So Jesus comes down from the mountain. And as you may not be able to experience this, but the readers are going to hear Mount Sinai. Like, you rarely hear the word mount. Other mountain is Mount Sinai. So Jesus is coming down from the mountain. He's the second Moses. All of the Beatitudes, all of the Sermon on the Mount is this long sermon of new commandments, of the new you, the new God, like the new patriarch. Jesus is the new patriarch bringing down new commandments, okay? And now I want to take a step back here. The mountain that he's on is not a huge Everest, okay? We're talking Briones Hills. We're talking Lime Ridge Mountain Hills. You got the picture? So he's not 13,000 feet up or 22. He's maybe 500 feet up. But he's the setting of this, again, is Jesus saying, here's the new kingdom. This is how the economy of the kingdom works. And so he's walking down this hill, and all of a sudden, there's a leper right in front of him. Okay? Let me get down on the floor to show you what the leper's doing. All right, that's a position of two things, what's going on. The leper is coming to him in a position of begging and also bowing down in worship. I want to paint another picture of what's going on. So Jesus has been teaching on the Mount for, well, let's pretend 2 or 3 days. So you've got hundreds, if not thousands of people in the valley and on the mountain. And then Jesus is walking down, and it doesn't say they all stayed up there and microwaved their burritos and made their pita bread. It says the crowds followed him. All right, so you've got hundreds of people on their Sunday afternoon hike coming down the mountain. And all of a sudden, there's this leper that stops Jesus in his tracks. Okay, now picture this. Lepers, nobody wanted to be around the leper. So I imagine if there's a traffic cam on a highway and there's an obstacle in the highway like a quarter mile down the road, I picture a highway of traffic driving down the highway, so red lights start going on, and everybody kind of goes around. Can you see that image? Where you're on the city, you're downtown New York, there's crowds on the sidewalk, and there is just a disgusting, gross object or person on the sidewalk. What are those people going to do? They are going to part the seas, man. They're going to step in the street. They're gonna walk around like this and step on each other's toes. They're gonna back into all the retail windows, and they're gonna keep going. I believe this is an image of what's happening here. Hundreds of people coming down, headed home, following Jesus. Maybe they stop and maybe they just part the rivers and just keep walking. So there's this circle around Jesus, if you can kind of imagine that scene there for a minute. And the thing about lepers is as messed up they are dramatically aware of their mess, right? Lepers know themselves really, really well. They know what boat they're in. Their sin is obvious on their skin. Anybody feel like everybody can see all of your mess? Like everybody knows your sin, even though they don't really, like people are thinking about you all the time. They're talking about you. I mean, we're so insecure and fragile. We're thinking many, many things that people aren't actually thinking. But these people were thinking all of those things about him. He's a messy guy. He's a smelly guy. Likely the people maybe wanted to stone him like they could stone lepers if they were out in public. So I mean, just imagine you've got Jesus, then you've got this very sick, very ill person, this man, kneeling in front of Jesus. It's embarrassing. It's violating to all of the other people. They see him as an eyesore. What I'm trying to do is help us understand that we're actually the leper. So in this story, our lives are in fact, actually the leper person here. So he knows his mess. And I wonder if you can kind of understand this a little bit. The leper, I wonder how long was he waiting at the bottom of the mountain? Like he knows he can't go up to Jesus. He knows he can't be around people. He knows his sin from the past that caused him leprosy, which isn't the case, but people have told him that. He knows he's obnoxious to other people. He knows he shouldn't be there. How long has he been waiting for Jesus? So, tangent question. I don't know what your mess is. Again, sin or just stuff in life, insecurity, self-image, fracturedness, worry, anxiety, fear. I don't know what your mess is. How long are we going to wait for Jesus to come off the mountain until we say, Jesus, would you help me? Would you forgive my sin, or would you flush me out? Would you distill my life? Would you heal me? Would you help my marriage? Would you help my budget? Would you help my fear? Would you help my anxiety? Would you help my judgment of other people who I think I'm better than them? Like, how long are you going to stand or kneel and wait for Jesus to come to you? And Jesus is saying, I'm always here. Go ahead and come to me. So the leper knows he's not allowed and around the other people. I want to kind of continue to paint this dire situation of the leper and our sin, because Jesus enters into an intense scenario here. So if the leper is a leper, we all know that they weren't allowed to be around people, right? Not only were they not allowed to be around people, but they weren't allowed to be at the temple. So he loses his heritage and identity as a worshiper. He's not allowed to worship God, which is what the temple was for. Not only, so he loses his spiritual identity. Trying to paint a picture of our mess here, because this is how intense it is. If he can't worship in the temple, if he's kicked out of the synagogues, then he loses his identity as a Jew. So he's no longer got an identity with his own tribe, with his own period. That means even though Sheila is full on English, right? If you're kicked out of England, in essence, she's not allowed to be English anymore. Like she can't drink tea. Like you would not be allowed to drink tea. Okay. Sheila, Kim, you would not be allowed to go skiing ever again. Like, let's just pretend that's the scenario. I would not ever be allowed to go mountain biking again in my life. So that's like how the situation is. So he's kicked out of the temple. He's kicked out of the synagogue. He's kicked out of from being a Jew. And so in all of the other Jews' eyes, it's kind of like my dog. He is a non-human, right? That's how bad this situation is. And I kind of want to project a little bit. I wonder what he feels like in the middle of this crowd with hundreds of people surrounding him, seeing his mess, seeing his sin, because they think he's sinful and that's why he's a leper, seeing his fragileness, his vulnerability. I wonder if he's embarrassed. I wonder what he emotionally and mentally feels like as everybody stares and looks at him. But here's the thing, he doesn't care. He's desperate for God to do something. How desperate are you for God to do something? Like, what is in your life that you need God to stop in his tracks and say, I've got you? And here's the tenderness of the moment. I feel like, and I want to project this. I feel like Jesus engages with this leper and just says, like, covers him with his cloak because he doesn't want everybody else to see his shame. Like, he says, come on in here. Just come on in. Let me take care of you. Let me help you. Let me hold you. Years ago, when my wife and I were first dating, I didn't know that there was a serious dark spot in my life, a serious amount of pain. We didn't realize my dad was an alcoholic until I was, I think, from ages 12 to 18 was like the wet, non-sober, dry alcoholic years. None of us knew it. But in hindsight, I can now hear the vodka bottles underneath the truck seat as we traveled home from work every day. We didn't have a rough time with him as an alcoholic, but there was something inside of me. So when my wife and I started dating, and she would go out with her friends and have a drink here and there, or have a drink at her home, just the presence of the alcohol and me being in a relationship with somebody else who was drinking alcohol, for some reason, like something came out of the closet, and it freaked me out. I'm talking internal anger, rage, and fear. And then when I was in worship in community and I would think about my relationship with my wife, there were multiple times in worship, but I would just start bawling and have no idea why I was crying. Like, I'm just crying. The preacher or teacher is saying something and the Holy Spirit is doing something inside. And this pain and darkness is just coming out. And I remember being in one service where I just had no other option but to go up to the stage when the people call you up for healing. And so I'm kneeling on the stage, just crying. And this pastor is preaching for me. And he's just praying for me and the whole 9 yards. And I remember going home that day on my knees, just the fear and paranoia, and saying, Lord, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get rid of this stuff. And I remember the image of Jesus saying, sit down on the sofa with me, and wrapping his arm around me and holding me close, just like pulling me in. And it was in that moment where it all disappeared. The fear, the pain, the anger, it just all disappeared. And I'm just picturing Jesus in your mess, my mess, whatever mess it is, okay? And I'm not just talking about sin, I'm also talking about hurt that prevents us from living the way God created us to live. And I see Jesus just getting down on his knees and throwing his cloak over this leper and saying, I got you. Don't worry about everybody else. Right now, it's just me and you. I wonder if you guys can go to Jesus with whatever mess it is and say, Jesus, I really need you right now. And life may be perfect and fine. It may feel fine. But there's something in there that God's still desiring to heal. I don't know what it is. We're always a work in progress, right? And the leper says this: if you choose, would you? And would you please picture yourself for a moment in this position of going to God? Just for a moment, identify what it is in life that you need. Fill in the blank. Jesus, if you choose. Is there fear, anxiety? Is there people pleasing? Is there feeling like you just got to shape up and look polished and have it all together? Is there concern about your kids? Are you feeling somehow helpless in a situation? Lord, I don't have control and I need some kind of control, because right now I'm like standing on one of those American Ninja like wobbly things and I feel like it's going to fall at any moment and I can't help. Would you please help? And so he says, if you choose, would you make me clean? And here's where we go deep into the situation. When he says, and I've preached on this before, if you choose or if you will, the Greek wording for this is, Jesus, I'm just longing for you guys to picture a conversation with you and Jesus. I hope this can become prayer language with you. He says, Jesus, if you will, if you desire, if it's your deepest desire at your core, would you want to do this for me? He doesn't know what Jesus is going to say. Like, Imagine the risk this man is taking. He's risking death by going to Jesus. And then he's potentially risking rejection. Like, he doesn't know what Jesus is going to say. In other parts of the Bible, the parallel emotion for what the leper is asking Jesus to do is compassion. He's saying, at your core, do you have enough compassion to do this? So there's a couple other examples when there's a paralyzed man, I think it's in Mark, when his buddies, not the roof situation, but his buddies bring this paralyzed man on the mat to Jesus. And before anybody opens their mouth, Jesus says, he says, your sins are forgiven, and he heals you. Like, pretend like the guys are coming through this door. Jesus is doing something else in the story. He just drops everything and runs over there and says, you're forgiven, healed, go have fun. Go swim in the lake, go run. There's that story. There's another story where Jesus is riding into the city. It says he's moved with compassion because people are harassed and helpless. Jesus has compassion and he feeds hungry people. Do you guys know what hunger cramps feel like? You ever been on a diet or just you've been on too long of a hike and you forgot enough gorp? Do we use that word gorp anymore? Good old raisins and peanuts. Right? Trail mix, okay? East Coast language gorp, good old raisins and peanuts. Like, have you ever felt hungry? People are flipping hungry, and Jesus is hurting for them. There's another passage, he's moved with compassion, and Jesus broke down and wept. What I'm trying to drill home is when you're in your car with your head on your steering wheel and you've had enough, or you're pissed off or angry or impatient, or I don't know what it is, but you've got to, I just long for you as a pastor, for you to picture Jesus with it, your pain moving his guts. Okay. When the leper asked Jesus, if you will, compassion in the Hebrew or even the Greek language, it says, and it moved his bowels, not his intestines, right? I grew up, my mom saying, you have to have a bowel movement. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about his guts. Jesus' guts are moved for your needs from the innermost being. Anyway. So he says, will you make me clean? If you choose, meaning if Jesus, if your greatest desire of your heart is to clean me, would you do it? Would you make me clean? Now, the leper, and I'm hoping you too, the leper knows that he's got more than just psoriasis. The leper knows he needs more than CeraVe. He needs more than Curology and all those other crazy things my wife and daughter buy on Amazon that hemorrhage our fun. Little drama here, little baggage, right? He knows he needs more than just some YouTube channel with motivational speaking. He's saying, everybody's telling me I've got a lot of stuff going on inside, and that's why I've got leprosy. He's saying, Jesus, I need you to reach inside and just full on cleanse me. Would you please do it? He's asking for more than just his skin. He's asking to eliminate social stigma. He's, the counseling's not going to work. Self-esteem's not going to work. All of the things we do to medicate our anxiety, which is real, is just not going to work. He needs a comprehensive renovation of his life. He recognizes that all of what he's been trying to do ain't been working. Any of us here tried to do things for yourself to fix whatever situation it was, and it just wasn't working? When you feel like you're in crisis, what do? We make crisis-based decisions. When we're hungry, last night I'm making dinner, and my little Mexican meal that I pulled out of the freezer was in a block. I was like, that's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to pour out and just go in the stir thing. But there was a tray of brand new oatmeal raisin cookies on top of the microwave. And I'm hungry. So I started just eating. Well, that's not what it was. I was eating the oatmeal cookies while I couldn't wait for my healthy Mexican meal. What I'm trying to get at is we do lots of things. We do lots of things to medicate the real issue. Andy Stanley, years ago, if you know him, he's a pastor. He has this great illustration of cleaning up mess with mess. So the leper knows he needs something else than more mess. So Andy Stanley, he's a teenager. You guys know Andy Stanley? Have you heard of him? Pastor in Georgia, son of Charles Stanley. But he tells a story of him being a teenager, just really wanting to drive his dad's car. And he's not old enough. His dad had said, no, you can't take it out. Don't touch the car in the garage. So Andy, when his mom and dad are gone, takes the car out. He opens up the garage door, successfully not running into it, backs it out, closes it, takes for a drive around the block, brings it home, lifts up the garage door without running into it, pulls in a little too far, knocks over a bunch of paint cans, paint goes all over the garage floor. So what does he need to do? He needs to clean up the paint. He needs to clean up the mess on his own before his dad gets home. So what does he do? He gets out a bunch of soap and water and starts mixing the soap and water. Exactly. He starts mixing the soap and water with towels and water. And okay, if you can only imagine all of the suds. So he's thinking, what do I have to do? I've got to spray more water, which creates more volume on the mess. And his takeaway is, you cannot clean up mess with mess. The only person that can clean up our mess is Jesus coming into our lives and taking care of it. But part of the issue is we need to come to him and say, would you please help? So he says, would you please clean me? And what's Jesus's response? No way. I'm too busy. No, that's not what he says. He says, I'm going to throw this in there. Are you crazy? Do you know who I am? I can't but help clean you. So Jesus has whatever else in the universe Jesus could be doing. He puts everything on pause and says, you're the most important thing in my life right now. I want to heal you. Jesus chooses to clean him. He says, my bowels, as Goodwin states, my bowels yearn to clean you. So friends, Jesus' innermost part yearns to do whatever it is you need him to do. And he wants to enter into that mess with you. I love this tender moment. Not does Jesus only stop what he's doing and engage tenderly, but he actually breaks every rule possible and touches the leper. Imagine how long it's been since this guy has been touched. I don't know about you, but in COVID, people weren't hugging each other. Can you remember your first hug from a friend or a stranger? And men, I don't know if you can relate to this, and maybe women you can, but for some reason, there's a certain time in life when I need a hug from another guy. It's not a stronger hug. It's like camaraderie, brotherly. Like the other day, I asked for a hug from my son, and he let go. I said, son, can you please hold me just a little longer? He's like, yeah, it's a little different, isn't it? And how long has it been since this guy has been touched by another human? Not to mention God himself. It's irresistible for Jesus to engage with us. Here's another image I want to give you. And some of you might think, we got the idea, we got it, but I want to just keep kicking this dead horse here. The other day, I'm driving to the YMCA. It's in downtown Oakland. And I just kind of wanted to get there. And I see this old elderly lady, okay? She's in her 80s. So it's not 50 or 60 elderly. She's at least in her 70s or 80s. She leaves the grocery outlet, and I pull up inside of her. I'm in my shirt, and I didn't know how she was responding. I didn't know if she thought I was going to, take advantage of her, or she was going to freak out. I didn't say, do you need help? I said, can I please help you? Because often people, they'll say no because they don't want help or think they need help. And I got out of the car, and I kind of crossed the line a little bit. I put my hand on her shoulder. I said, can I please help you? So she's pushing one of those walkers that has the brakes on it, right? And the place where you sit, and then it has wheels. And hanging over the handles are these groceries. And it took us longer because my car was full of paint stuff. It took me longer to get her groceries in and then her sit in there and then figure out how to put the walker in than it actually took to drive her there. So she's sitting in the car, and I walk around the back, and then I sit in my seat, and the windows are up. And you know the phrase, "it caused me to gag," it's an expression, right? This was real. I sat down in that car, and her smell was intoxicating. Not in like, oh, there's my beautiful wife, and it's great perfume, and I'm intoxicated with love. My nose was burning. I was having to take short breaths. And my gag reflex, it was literally like that. There was urine, there was mold smell, there was pore smell. If you know what the smell of pore smells like, it was dirt. And I thought my first reaction, praise God, was, this is what Jesus would do. So here's the image I was thinking of. I imagine Jesus driving around in a clown car, right? A circus clown car. Jesus is driving, and he's just driving all over Oakland, all over Israel, all over Walnut Creek, picking up people. Like it's a small little Chevette. And he's like got 2 people in there, and then like 8 people in there, and like 10 people in there, all of them smelling just like this. And he's saying, this is why I came. I love this. Let's pick up everybody we came. And I say it's like a clown car because when they get to where they're going and people can't pull, yeah, exactly. They're just like one after another coming out, coming out, coming out. And these green gaseous fumes of urine and dirt and mold are everywhere. And Jesus is saying, I'm going out for more people, right? He drops them off at the Ritz-Carlton that he owns. And he's got like this Cheesecake Factory buffet there, and an ice cream parlor there, and new clothes and a hot shower. He's saying, this is all for you. And I know you're going to leave and you're going to get smelly again, but I'll pick you up again and do it all over again. Like that's the image I have of this scenario where he says, I choose to clean you, and it's irresistible for me to do it. And I'll do it again, and I'll do it as many times as you want. Let me close with this. And this is kind of a little bit of you've got to do the application on your own here about what your mess is and what you need Jesus to do, and just what's your posture when you call for help. But here's a missional takeaway for us. When Jesus does this, and when he does all of the miracles to help people, he's not creating something supernatural. He's not like taking this leper and turning it into something additional. Jesus is in the business of rehumanizing the dehumanized. He's just taking all the broken things and turning them back into the most natural thing. They're not supernatural. Like he sees what God created each of us to be. And when he engages with us, he's just taking us back to what we were most designed to be. He's saying, I'm going to name some names. He's saying, Herbert's, I didn't design you to experience that. Let me transform you. Janet, June, Sheila, James, Tom, I know you're suffering, and I just want to take you back to garden living. So he's taking us back to the way he designed. So here's the missional takeaway. As you're living your life, and pardon me for spazzing so much, I had coffee yesterday. As you're walking around your life, and Jesus says, pray, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So when you see things that just shouldn't be the way they are, what are you going to do? Jesus engages with the leper, and he sees someone who shouldn't be the way he is. Dick goes to this school in Oakland, and he sees kids' study skills and their illiteracy and their hunger. He sees the way they are, and he says, that's not how it's supposed to be. So as Christians, when you walk around and you see things how they're not supposed to be, and we are the living love of God in flesh, what are you going to do? That's my challenge. Let's close in prayer. Father in heaven,